Okay, here we go. So now let's examine Standard 19C. We're going to look at the European theater, including the difficulties that the U.S. faced in delivering weapons, food, medical supplies to troops, the Battle of D-Day, and the fall of Berlin. Okay, so, um, oops, no, that's not where I want to go. Okay, so here is the European theater over on this side, and this is the other front that we had to fight during World War II. So the US allies did the best they could to help out in the European theater. The US was the prime supplier of war material to the allies. Remember that the US had become the arsenal of democracy during this point in time, meaning we were providing and producing everything needed for the allies to win the war. And so we were supplying all of those materials to the allies. And to supply the European allies, it was necessary to cross the Atlantic Ocean. So this took between 10 to 15 days. This is a long trip. Allied shipping had to also fight European submarines and aircraft just to get the supplies over there. So, how to reach occupied Europe? Well, initially, the British Isles served as a supply depot while the Allies built up their forces to invade the continent. But after landing troops on the coast of France and Italy, supplies followed the forces inland using the existing road networks through here. So the farther inland the Allied forces moved, the longer it would take to get the supplies to the front lines. And one particular supply that was really hard to get them was gasoline. And with the mobile transportation, gasoline was really relied heavily upon. In fact, the Allied advance actually stopped. It stalled in November 1944 because the armor units ran out of fuel. So it's crazy. So it was really, really important for the Allied advance to have that gasoline. Lend-lease goods were shipped to the Soviet Union, and look at the trip that they had to take. They had to fight German submarine defenses, and they had to go all the way around the Scandinavian peninsula, and they had to go all the way around Africa to the Persian Gulf and through Iran just to get to the Soviet Union. That is a huge trek right there. All right, let's talk about D-Day. D-Day happened June 6, 1944. It was the code name for the first day of Operation Overlord. This was the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France. So the Nazis occupy France, and this is not really surprising since Germany and France are neighbors right there. And so, of course, France was taken over fairly quickly, and we had to get back over there. So this was the largest seaborne invasion in history. Over 156,000 men crossed the English Channel. So you've got Great Britain, you've got the English Channel separating you from European mainland. And so to get 156,000 men in 6,939 vessels to cross the English Channel without being found out was a huge task, a very daunting task. And it was Dwight D. Eisenhower who was in charge. He was the commander in charge of this, the U.S. commander in charge of D-Day. And so what they decided to do was to trick the Germans into thinking they were going to cross the English Channel somewhere else. And so they set up a phantom army, and fake radio messages to trick the Germans to think that the attack wasn't going to happen where it actually happened. This was a success. American and British forces were able to sneak across the English Channel, and they were able to maintain their army intact when they got to mainland Europe east of Germany. So this was a big, big thing because it gave us a geographic advantage. And this invasion marked the beginning a victory for the Allies to reclaim Europe. And so they're going to push their way to Germany. The Battle of Berlin. So this was this was the battle that ends ends World War II in the European theater. Okay, so this is when the Nazis and Hitler fall. So two Soviet army groups attack Berlin. Berlin is the capital of Germany, from the east and south, while a third attacked Germany forces north of Berlin. The Soviets lost 81,116 men while taking the city of Berlin. The Germans lost 458,080 men trying to defend it. This battle was one of the bloodiest in history. Adolf Hitler was in Berlin during the battle, and before it ended with Soviet occupation, he and many of his followers committed suicide. The city's defenders surrendered on May 2nd, 1945, but fighting continued outside the city until the formal German surrender, known as VE Day, ended the war on May 8th, 1945. And so the war in Europe ended. Okay, this was a task given to who? You will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. This was the D-Day order on June 6, 1944. Can you guess who this United States general who supervised the invasion of Normandy and the defeat of Nazi Germany and became the 34th president of the United States from 1890 to lived from 1890 to 1961. So who was this commander? He was the U.S. commander in charge of D-Day and given this task, and that is Dwight D. Eisenhower. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Let me pause this.